Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. A big welcome to everyone. My name is Laura and I am delighted that you are joining us for today's ESPC community webinar. Today I am joined by Simon Doy from iThink 365 and Simon Hudson from Novia Works Limited and Kinata Limited, who will talk to you guys about maturing your employee experience with Microsoft Viva. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESPC_community and our hashtag is hashtag ESPC. Tweet us, at us and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our resource centre, which is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars and how-to videos. You can access and view the resource centre by visiting our website sharepointeurope.com and clicking the content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar, Get Answers from Reports Faster with SVG with Stephen Razel. This webinar takes place on Thursday, January 11th from 11 AM to 12 PM CET. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars. So what a whirlwind few weeks it has been since ESPC 23 in Amsterdam. Where do I begin? Well, ESPC 23 brought together industry leaders, tech enthusiasts, IT professionals, MVPs, Microsoft leaders, and more for 4 days of immersive sessions and networking. Packed with innovation and insights, the conference showcased the cutting-edge developments shaping the future of collaboration and cloud computing. From insightful sessions to collaborative discussions and heaps of fun, this conference was full of learning, networking, and fun. We got the chance to meet some old friends and also some fantastic new faces, and finally got to connect with in person with some of those online friends who are all a part of the amazing Microsoft 365 community. The energy at the event was overwhelming and everyone was happy to be back with the community, sharing ideas, building new relationships and fostering old ones. We are super excited to go to Stockholm next December, the 2nd to the 5th, for another 4 days of learning, networking and collaboration. So join us next year in Stockholm and snatch up the best offer that you can before it is too late. So visit sharepointeurope.com/pricing to find out more about this special offer. And of course, elevate your Power Platform work ethic and supercharge your savings by saving a whopping €500 on European Power Platform Conference 2024 tickets. The European Power Platform Conference will take place in the Square, Brussels, next June 11th to the 13th. So snatch up this offer quickly as it is only valid for some time. Okay, so after the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any question you might have into the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will also be recorded and added to the Resource Centre, where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenters today, Simon and Simon. Hello, guys.
Hey, everybody. Hi there. How are we doing? Right. I'm just going to share the screen. Okay, that's me. Yeah, I'm Simon Hudson. We're not going to read all this stuff out, but I'm into my second year of being an MVP, so that's rather nice. I've been around Microsoft technology for a really rather long time, but my background is not IT whatsoever. I've started 3 companies over the course of my recent career after a first career in the medical device industry. Between us, Simon and I run one of the oldest Microsoft 365 user groups in the UK, which has got international reach these days post-pandemic. That's pretty cool. And as you'll gather from today's topic, we're also both heavily involved in the development and maintenance of the maturity model for Microsoft 365. And there's a bunch of links if you want to find out more about me. Hi there, I'm Simon Doy. Yeah, I've been
it's been a pleasure to be part of the M365 North user group, which had a few different names over it's on its 10th year this or next year, 2024. I do come from a techie background. I don't know, I've never really worked out what I am, but I like developing, I like infrastructure, I like Microsoft 365. So I've been sort of doing this stuff for 20 years, really starting from the SharePoint side of things, and heavily involved in the maturity model for Microsoft 365. We have sessions every third Tuesday through the Microsoft PMP community, so we'd love you to join if you find the stuff interesting and want to learn more. And it's not just about employee experience as well, so we've got a lot around AI, as everybody has, and there's some links to me as well. So let's get started. So the first step then is, why bother? Why is it that we should be interested in employee experience? And so if we sort of move over to this slide, which gives some great stats, fundamentally, what we're trying to do here is trying to have more engaged employees in a business. Why do we want more engaged employees? There's some real benefits from that. The one that I really like is that organizations which have got engaged employees who are active in the business and want to drive that business forward, increase the profitability, up to 21% more profitability according to a Gallup survey. And highly engaged employees are 12 times less likely to leave a company, and that's something which organizations are really having to sort of address at the moment, is keeping their staff engaged and giving them sense of purpose and drive, and keeping hold of those excellent employees as well.
There are a couple of kickers, however. Since we're all spending so much time doing online things like webinars and all the other stuff, people are observing that there's a limited amount of downtime outside the meetings, worse than it was pre-pandemic. And heaven knows, I remember what it used to be like back when I had a corporate career and you walked from meeting to meeting. People don't even get the walking time anymore. So that's a problem, and something that probably needs to be actively addressed, and definitely degrades the employee experience. It drives burnout and dissatisfaction and stress. So I think there are some things that we need to think about to ensure that employee experience remains at a high level. And we're going to take you through some ways of thinking about some of that.
Yeah, and the last one there just is to think about, and this is certainly true in my organisation, that employees, we all want to learn. We want to be learning sort of the latest stuff and keep developing. I mean, that's really one of the reasons why a lot of us work, is just to keep learning, keep ourselves engaged, learning and finding new things. And so employees are saying that they'll stay longer in organisations which invest in their learning and development.
So I guess the first question is, well, what is employee experience, and how do we know if we've got a good one? And there's lots of definitions of employee experience, and we're not going to offer you a definitive view on it. I think most people can understand the concept of, do you like the place you work at? Do you feel, involved, engaged, supported, valued? There's a whole bunch of things around that go to make up good experiences. And equally, all of us have experienced bad employee experiences. I've left 2 companies because of bad experiences. So I think a lot of people will find they define bad employee experiences really easily, but not necessarily talk about the good experiences. So I guess we really ought to be measuring it. Whatever it is for you and your organization, we ought to at least be measuring it. And there's a really old adage, still true in these data science days, that if what gets measured gets acted upon. So how do we go about measuring employee experience? Many organizations, I'd like to say most, use quantitative staff surveys. So there'll be an annual or quarterly staff survey that's sent out, and people are expected to fill in a bunch of questions, which is hoped to give a sense of where the organization is at, and is used by managers and senior managers to maybe act on that and try and improve things in the organization, or wonder why. These days, with Microsoft Viva, if you've got that rolled out, that might well be a pulse survey. Also, if you've got Viva, there are some quantitative tools in there which let you, as a team manager or as an exec, look at the performance of your team, how much time they're spending in those meetings, and a whole bunch of other objective metrics. And I think those quantitative measures are really good. I think part of the problem is people aren't sure what to do with them, so they haven't necessarily got a mechanism for turning insights into action, but it's a good thing to have the insights at least to start with. However, that's not the whole story. Those things only measure the things they measure, and they often miss some of the softer pieces. So in mature organizations, they also have a range of soft measures, qualitative measures. Way back in the day, I really got hooked in on the power of stories within organizations, organizational stories, as a way of getting a sense of what do people really think about and feel about their organization. And there's a whole mechanism whereby you can create stories in order to prevent negative stories arising spontaneously. So there's some interventions there. You can listen to staff language. You can, especially as a manager or a supervisor, do management by walking about, not sitting in your ivory office, but going out and talking to your team and teams in other parts of the organization and hearing what the sentiment is. We do sentiment analysis if we're a sophisticated organization on our comms with our clients. Why are we not doing sentiment analysis with our staff? One other comment before I jump on. I think we also need to be careful that we get a broad sample. Some people in organizations will just look at their team and go, my team's working really well, and extrapolate from that to say, so everything's great in the organization. Senior managers are especially exposed to that because they only get the good news filtered up to them oftentimes. So we need to be aware of bias and skew in the messages that get passed up to the communication channels. So beware of that. People just don't like telling the real truth to people that have control over their careers.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about what really the employee experience is about, is making people in the organization feel. And we've got a number of areas around in the employee experience. And so the first thing is that people are able to bring their best work and every day, and they feel that they're being listened to, and that gives them a sense of they can focus on the work that they need to do. A really important part of feeling part of an organization is connection. So having a way to build connections with both your internal, the people you work with every day, and also connections outside of your team is exceptionally important. We need to sort of as well feel that we understand what the culture is of the business, and how the culture of the business makes me feel part of that company, and the ideas and the things which are being suggested, that makes you feel listened to and valued. So that helps with well-being. And then we've got ways that we can reach out and get support and feel supported by the organisation and the colleagues. We've got this, really important is this sense of purpose. This creates the drive within somebody to do better, to help the organisation, to help their teammates. So how do we get that sense of purpose and drive into an employee? Again, it's about having that being engaged in the business, and part of that is coming back to the well-being and making you feel valued. You need to feel like you can share your ideas and knowledge, and not they not get belittled, and that you're trusted, that what you're saying is being listened to, has value, and that will help continue that growth, so that more ideas will come out. And we all say things which maybe not were the best ideas, but often those that might plant a seed in somebody else who then go and takes that on, and there's a conversation. And this is really, I see this a lot with my team, that that they feel confident that they can solve problems, and if they can't solve a problem, that they've got a support network to go out and get help. That's a really big area, particularly people in a technical background. And that you're empowered, that you've got some autonomy, that you can make a difference and you can do something which has meaning, which comes back again to having a sense of purpose and drive. So that sort of, all of that together, means that we are having a great employee experience. If we can tick these boxes, and you can see we've grouped these feelings into areas of or categorizations, which we'll talk about further. Simon, did you have any?
Talked a bit about how people feel and how they think, and I think it's important to understand that the feelings are actually more potent and more nuanced than the thinking. At heart, we're still, we've only recently come down from the trees, so we're highly driven as a species around our emotional state. And the emotional state is the thing that's most likely to make somebody dissatisfied, perhaps even to the point of leaving the company. As I said, I've done that a couple of times, and it's mostly been about feelings. You then justify it with thinking. So you need to make sure that you've got mechanisms for measuring the feelings as well. And we also need to recognise that there are different personality types. Some people are strongly biased towards their feeling side of it, and others are strongly biased towards the thinking. And where those two things interact with each other, there are often misunderstandings or a failure to recognise the importance of both. So you've got a really sort of thinking manager, and I've worked with some of those, they don't understand the power of the emotions. And the emotional people don't really understand why it is the thinking manager is like the way he is and apparently passionless. So there's some tools for that. There's quite a lot of tools. If you jump onto the next slide, Simon. One of the oldest ones is Myers-Briggs, and that's divvies people up more on a personal basis. But this is a tool that we've used inside my companies called DISC, and it has these 4 domains. And the left-hand side, you've got sort of the dominance and the conscientiousness. Those tend to be thinking domains. The influence and the steadiness tend to be more emotional domains. I run this for all of my teammates whenever we have people join the company, and it makes sure that if I see, I won't use names, this chap here having some kind of poor interaction with this chap here, I understand why that would be, because I understand their personality types, and we can use coaching to make sure that both of them get a good employee experience out of their interactions with each other. And that goes to then build culture and a bunch of actions and make sure that teams work well together. There's one other thing I wanted to say about this sense of feeling and understanding is remember that teams, well-organized, coherent teams, sort of have a personality of their own. And you can have a Gestalt team personality that also has feelings and a personality, which is sort of some amalgam of the people in it. And that's why sometimes you get conflicts between teams in different parts of the organization, because they have different values and different personality types. So you need to have this meta thinking where you look at the individuals for their employee experience, but also their grouped employee experience with the teams that they operate in.
Yeah, I think DISC is really interesting, and if you haven't, if it's not something you've sort of looked into, then I really would suggest you do, because it helps in a lot wider range than you might imagine. So for example, if you look at that dominance and the conscientious side, somebody who has a high D, they would like emails and communication in bullet points. Now, if you sent that communication to somebody who's a high C, they'd hate it. They want detail and paragraphs. And it's really interesting when you start thinking about how you're communicating with these different types. And there's a great book called Surrounded by Idiots, which talks a lot around DISC and why people might think that somebody's an idiot because they're not talking in the language that they understand. So yeah, it's really, really insightful. Right. So we're going to talk about the life cycle of an employee, and we've got this 2 slides here. So originally, when we talked about Microsoft Viva and employee engagement, Viva had a focus which was really about people when they were within the organization. So you can see here we've got this sort of new employee user story as a signal of where Viva traditionally focused. And before that, we've got sort of before they're an employee, you know, that process of how you attract employees. Maybe you're pushing out posts via LinkedIn, starting to kind of show all the things that are going on inside that organization, you know, to kind of attract and get people to gravitate towards you and understand who you are and what the organization is about. We have the recruitment process where we're looking to understand the skills with which we need for our teams, and then that interview hiring process which brings them in. If we'll sort of skip over the middle piece and we'll come to that in the next slide. But the other part which often isn't thought about as part of an employee experience is when people leave. You know, ideally we want to not burn any bridges. We want people to leave, you know, and they've had a good time. They've learned a lot in the organization. They've really helped the organization move forward. But also, you know, we want to learn about why they're leaving. So we've got offboarding processes in place. You know, maybe there's exit interviews, but also keeping in touch with those post employees, those employees who've left through an alumni. And when we were coming up, talking through employee experience is something which one of the team talked about, how they were part of an alumni, and it's not something which I'd thought about before. So it's just interesting just to think about the life cycle of an employee. And then recently that sort of shifted a bit. So now Viva has got a greater focus, and we've got skills in Viva where we can use the LinkedIn graph and we can start to understand what skills our current team have got and what skills we need, and use that to help decide on how we're going to recruit and what skills we're looking for those roles. But if we think then about how Viva helps, it sort of fits into the life cycle of an employee. We've got that recruitment, that hiring piece, but it's really about how do we start to get them, people up to speed with working in an organization. How do we do that onboarding so that they've got the skills, the knowledge, the understanding of how to navigate around the business and how to get things done in the business. And then while they're working at the organization, we go into the engage. How do we keep people being able to communicate, have that sense of connection, and we're developing that person, their skills, so they become a more and more valuable employee in the organization, until the point where they're able to find another opportunity and they move on. I mean, hopefully that doesn't happen, but let's be honest, people are always going to move on. So, but we want to get the most out of the team. We want the team to get the most out of working at the business. So we've got that sort of that full life cycle of an employee, and we're going to break that down into employee experience areas. Simon, is there anything which you wanted to add to this?
No, I think we've covered that now. Unless you think I forgot.
I don't think so. So we've talked through sort of employee experience area. So how does Viva fit in with the employee experience? We are sort of we've laid it out in this order, but when we were talking about this the other day, Simon and I kind of said, well, actually, we think purpose and connection probably should be at the front. But the connection, let's start with that. We've got, how do we share the things which are going on in the organization? How do we reach everybody in the business, whether they are, working in the office, working from home, they're frontline workers, they're working in hospitals or ports or out on site. How do we share what's going on in the organization, success stories, the strategy? How do we build that sense of community and create those connection points for people within the organization? How do we connect people from diverse backgrounds and get them to feel included in the organization? And how do we give a personalized experience? And so, the three icons we've got there is Viva Engage, Viva Connections, and Amplify. And Viva Engage is really around creating links between teams which don't know one another. So you've got Microsoft Teams, which is great for people who are working together every day, but how do you then create a community outside of those teams? So Viva Engage is great for that, bringing together subject matter experts, bringing together communities. You have to have the obligatory pet community, for example, in there. You're bringing people with similar interests as well, and that helps build that rapport. And the same for diversity as well, bringing those communities together. Viva Connections brings the news and the communications, brings Teams and your SharePoint intranet together. And then Amplify, and it's interesting, Amplify works, the reason why we talk about this, Amplify uses some of that, those concepts comes with this to help people get those communications to reach the audiences that it's intended to, and trying to improve how people communicate to get the message heard. So Amplify allows us to improve our news and communication and the reach of that using AI and analytics to get feedback on those communications. If I just flip over to purpose, because I think that really is the next piece. If you think about what we talked about in the journey of bringing people on board, then what we do need to do is help them understand the culture of the organization, where they fit in, and then give them goals and objectives so that we've got, that they can align their activities. We've got insights through Viva Insights and Pulse, and Pulse is more of a basically getting surveys around teams and projects, and Insights with Glint is around getting surveys across the whole organization. And finally, we've got growth around learning, topics and connections. And we're going to move forward just so that we get through. There's quite a lot to pack in this session. Right, so we're going to talk about, we've got some new starters. We've got Sally and Jeff. We're going to do a bit of a role play, and we're going to introduce two characters in. So Simon, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to take on the role of Sally. She's actually quite a lot younger than I am, but hey ho. She's been appointed to Voyage Richards Limited. First day, we've seen that piece in the previous slides about there should be an engagement process before she joins. She didn't really get a lot of that, so she didn't quite know what to expect when she started, but she's excited about the new job and the prospects for her career. And she's going to be taking on the role of a sales exec.
Yeah, and we've got Jeff, who is, same role as Sally, but a different organisation called Viva Widgets, and has a completely different experience to Sally. So Jeff's sort of first day, he's met as he comes in, he's met by the manager who's waiting with a laptop and all some documentation to get him started. And he logs onto the intranet, and there's a welcome page, and he's guided to an onboarding area so that he can start to, when he gets a moment, start to kind of feel, get his feet under the table and start to feel that he's, understanding what the business and what his role is all about. He has an onboarding session where they discuss the vision, the mission, the values of the organisation, and he's given time in his calendar to meet up and appointments to set up with his colleagues to find out what they do and a bit about them, so he starts to feel like he can build rapport with his colleagues. How did Sally's day go?
Okay, so Jeff sounds like he's had a pretty good first day, and he's come out of that day feeling up, and his experience has been solid. Sally, not so much. I mean, the first thing is, when she arrived, she was left waiting in reception for about half an hour before anybody came down to bring her in. She eventually got to have a chat with her manager, but she wasn't set up with a laptop or the machine that she had access to, which was a bit old and clunky on her desk. She couldn't get into because no one had provided her with the login. She had to go back and find the manager and get the login for that. She didn't have a lot of structure around what she should do that first day. She ended up talking to one of her colleagues who she had to introduce herself to, and pick their brains, taking up their time, unscheduled, and managed to get at least some documents from her that she could read. So she went home at the end of this day a bit unhappy, really. You know, she thought it could have gone a lot better, a lot smoother. While people individually made her welcome, the organisation didn't smooth her way into the organisation. She was also in a bit of pain at the end of the day because Sally has a bit of a back problem, and there was no assessment before she arrived about any of her physical or other needs. And so the following day, when she went in, she took a back cushion to be able to use on the chair that she was provided with, rather than that having been sorted out by the organisation. So not a great start for Sally, I'm afraid, and you know, her experience wasn't terrific.
Yeah, that's a real shame, isn't it? I mean, what we wanted to do really is to show a demo, maybe sort of, you know, showing a little bit of what Jeff has got. So, you know, hopefully this gives some ideas, things you could be doing in your M365 environment. And we're just going to demo some connection topics, maybe a bit of Viva Engage as well. We want to make sure we get through all the slides. So let me flip over to my my session. Goodness me, I've got too many windows. Right, okay, so let's imagine we're Jeff. We've just logged into his laptop. We've cracked open Edge, and we've got an intranet homepage. And one of the things immediately he's got a welcome to the company, and he's got this get started link here. So he can, straight away he can, get started and start to understand a bit more about what I think, well, what this business is around. So let's go into here. And what we've got here is an employee onboarding site. We've got a call to action to start here. So let's do that. And there's an introduction to the organization and just explaining what's sort of going on and how to get help. There's a video from the owner just kind of introducing themselves to the new employee. And we've got some call to action, some things you could do, how to go and get help and introduce yourself to the community with Viva Engage. Also, some things which we want people to do. So setting up email signatures, updating your LinkedIn profile, really connecting yourself with the organization. And this is really important as well, giving people a way of breaking down the barriers and finding out a bit more about the new starter, that Jeff could come in and update his profile and explain a little bit about who he is and what he does, what projects he's been working on, his skills and expertise. And then we've got sort of a final call to action. This is using Viva Topics. So we've got a link to the employee offer and onboarding process, which they can use. We've also got links into Microsoft Viva Engage. So if I bring that across here, and this, you can start to introduce themselves into and get a sense of into getting, start introducing themselves, get a sense of the community, what's going on within that business. If I just move back, we've also, picking up things like, how to, we're a project, a services organization, so how to book your time against a project, how to book your holiday, how to access payslip and pay information, and start introducing how the business works. And these are all things which, you could sit down and maybe interview people and ask people what things did they wish that they had when they first started the organization, and use that to be able to build up what those things that you should put on your employee onboarding site. But here's some ideas. So let's flip back to the slides. Simon, you've got a slightly different example using Teams, haven't you? So
yeah, absolutely. So Viva's great. There's a lot of value in Viva, but you don't have to have Viva to get some of those same experiences going. So this is something that we do in one of my companies. We have an About Us section in basically every team. and that will often talk about the individual department or team that they're in. But in the HQ team and in the onboarding team, the About Us does the corporate stuff. So it lays out our business principles and our mission and our vision and those kinds of things, which are all about buying you into the principles and values and direction of the company. This would also have access to you can see there's an Our Team tab on this slide. So this would give you the access to the profiles of your team members and to the senior execs that you might interact with, so you know about the people in the organization. And we would normally extend this with other tabs pointing at key projects, link out to the website where our external face is. So we build all this, not in this case using Viva, because we didn't have it when I put this together, but using Microsoft Teams, a bit of SharePoint on the back end, and all the stuff which is absolutely standard with the cheapest of cheap Microsoft 365 license. And it's the same principles of connection, communication, community, and purpose.
Great stuff. So, at the end of Jeff and Sally's day, they have quite different feelings. We won't read through all of these, but Jeff is, it's a positive thing. He's ticking the boxes which we talked about in our initial slide about how we want people to feel if they've got a good employee experience. But Sally is not, not so sure, and is feeling a lot, is not feeling as connected, feeling a bit uncertain, and not feeling supported.
So time goes by, and it's a year later, and both Sally and Jeff they're very good, so they've been promoted, and they've been promoted to a role where they're launching a new product for the company. And again, their experience is a little bit different. Jeff's organization is very mature. We'll find out a bit more about that in a few minutes, what mature really looks like. But Jeff's organization is a bit mature. Sally's is very much not. Hers is all a bit ad hoc, firefighting, hand to mouth. So let's talk about those different experiences. Take it away, Simon.
Okay, so this is sort of a demo 1 year later. And we're going to talk again about Viva Engage. There's a bit of goals, Viva connections and topics. And we're going from Jeff's point of view. So Jeff, he's told about his promotion. He receives an email from his manager, and saying welcome welcome to the new role, and tell him about the promotion to be a senior sales executive. And we can see that they're going to, there's this new product. It's got a code name, Project Breakdawn, and it's going to be setting a new era for the company. And his role is going to be to lead the sales team and looking at how they're going to sell this new product and thinking about the strategy and approach to selling it. And so we can see that within this email, we've got a few hashtags in here, and these are links to topics in Viva Topics, and we can get an overview of what that topic's about, which is fantastic. You can start to understand what this project is all about, the people involved. There's even some resources around how to sell Project Breakdawn. Isn't that convenient? We've also got a link to Microsoft Viva goals as well. So there's a hashtag here around this product. So let's go and have a look at that. So we can see here that Jeff's boss has set some OKRs. So what are OKRs? Now, OKRs are a bigger subject than we've got time for now, but the concept of them are that we have an objective, so that's the O, and then we have a way of measuring whether we've met that objective, and that's using key results. So okay, it brings together OKRs. So if we go into Viva goals, we're going to go into this Viva topic, and very helpfully we've got a description of the goals, and we've got a page to introduce you to it, and we've got a call to action here to open Viva goals. So we're going to go into Viva goals, and the idea of Viva goals is, again, we talked about that sort of sense of purpose, that drive. the idea and the idea is to allow people to be aligned to the overall business strategy. So in this example, the business is looking to launch this new product. The business wants to be more profitable, increase turnover, and we can then align department OKRs to those main business OKRs, so that everybody is really moving in the same direction towards the same goal. They'll be doing different things to support that main strategy, that main business OKR. And so this example here, we've got Jeff here, who's been given this deliver sales process and prove how we can sell the product to a customer, and it's been assigned to the sales team, and Jeff is one of the owners of that. And so that's our objective, and then we've got a way of measuring whether that objective is successful by being able to come up with a key result, which is deliver 5 sales. So sell the product to 5 different customers, and then we can sort of prove that we can sell it to a customer. Now, there are going to be activities that need to happen, so project tasks which need to happen to make that, to meet that key result, to drive those sales. So we're going to have to work on pitch decks and what the reason is, the why of this product, how we can make sure that that resonates with the customer to drive those sales. So you have project activities and tasks, and so what we can do with Viva Goals is bring in planner, bring in project, other tools like Asana as well can be brought in. So you're tracking the tasks and activities to make that happen. Now, what might happen here is we want to sort of find out, and start to understand how we're going to sell this product. So if I go back to Project Breakdown, where again we've got a Viva topic card, and we can see a bit more about this project. What we do, and we do this quite a lot with our M365 setup, is we bring Viva Engage together into the topic as well, so that brings in that community together. Anyway, I see we're running out of time, so I'm going to switch back to the presentation. So after that year, and there's a promotion, we're launching this new product. How do the different people feel? And you can see that Jeff is excited, informed, but Sally, she doesn't have that same sort of support structure. So she's stressed, she's not really sure which way to go, is nervous, she feels isolated and underappreciated. And so, two very different, distinct experiences. So we then going to move further on. We'll go through this quite quickly, I think, now. So a few years later, it's time to move on, and Jeff has an exit interview, and the manager is reviewing successes and providing great feedback and encouraging engagement with the alumni network and supportive of the move. To be honest, he's probably a bit gutted that Jeff is moving, but you have to be supportive as a manager. Simon, how's Sally feeling?
Yeah, I'm not going to read them all out, but Sally basically leaves the company sort of, glad to be out. And and in future years, when she looks back on her time there, it isn't with excitement or happiness or satisfaction. It's with all those negative experiences that she's built up over the time, and she's not going to be a good advocate for that company. In fact, the chances are that she's going to grab the best people from that company and take her to wherever she's going to go next. So she's going to poach people out of the company, and they'll be willing to leave if she's got somewhere better for them to go. So there's definitely two different sets of experiences. So let's quickly jump into the next slide. So Sally's happy to be getting out, frustrated that her experience hasn't been great and that she hasn't grown as an individual as much as she would have liked. And Jeff, of course, has had the complementary, far more positive experience. So let's have a look at the maturity model in the last couple of minutes we've got left and think about what that actually means. The maturity model is it's a set of tools that we've been building over the last few years that wraps around the Microsoft 365 technology, but it's mostly about business and business processes and cultures and the way businesses get better. And the key thing is that down at the bottom level of the maturity model, that's the kind of experiences that Sally's been having. Not very good organization, not very good communication. Everything's being done, on the fly without any structure, not really learning from past mistakes. Then as organizations move up that stack, you find that they start to talk about things like quality standards and processes and documentation, and they start to ensure that those things are driven into the organization, and the staff know what they're meant to do in a given circumstance and have got resources and people they can lean on to make sure they can do the job they're expected to do really rather well. And so by the time you get to level 300, which is sort of the perfectly adequate level, organizations have got well communicated vision, their cultures managed, actively managed, there are good processes in place, they perhaps even feedback to improve those processes on an annual basis. They may have quality standards like ISO 9000 or whatever is appropriate in place that wraps around that as well. So level 300 is a good place for organizations to be. Most organizations have got parts of the organization which are level 300 or above, and some parts which are still a bit chaotic, either down to inadequate management or just because it's a new department or a new team or a new process and they're still working through the bugs and they're moving it up the level. And then right up at the top, you've got these excellent levels of 400 and 500. Level 400, the staff are in a great place. The organization tends to be quite profitable and effective. It's agile. It's getting active feedback from its processes internally and externally and using that to improve what they do. It knows where it is. It knows where it's going. The people have got the tools and the resource and the knowledge and the access they need to be able to do things very slickly, and they see that in the benefits of staff turnover and those other things we saw before. And then at the absolute pinnacle, they're doing all of that and more. They're doing future, horizon gazing. They're using things like data science and AI to improve things on the fly, and they really are considered to be the leaders in their field in some areas. Almost certainly not everywhere in the organisation, but some parts of the organisation are absolutely trailblazers in efficient, good practice and good business. So that's what it looks like overall. Simon, do you want to pick up any of the details in the last couple of minutes we have?
Well, I think we should try and sort of get into each of the pillars. So just to sort of recap, we're going to sort of look at maturity at each of these pillars around connection, insight, growth, and purpose. So the slide's just to remind you of what those are. So let's sort of delve into those. So if we start with connection, so remember this is around communication and sort of success stories. So level 100, right that default is news is shared via email, maybe word of mouth as well. But there's no real formal communities set up. There's no way for people to kind of connect, and that becomes really it's really difficult, particularly when you've got organizations which are distributed. You've got some people in the office, frontline workers working remotely as well. But as people start to understand the challenges that level has, then they're moving up to making a change, making a difference by bringing to moving to level 200, where we're starting to think about how we can get those communications, share those communications. Maybe we start establishing an intranet, and we've got a central team and maybe an internal comms team, maybe marketing, maybe it's sort of operations for smaller organizations, communicating out what's going on in the business and sharing the news stories. Maybe the sales, the head of sales is pushing out information about what business has been won. So just starting to share those success stories. Now, probably, small organizations won't be using things like Viva Engage, but teams using that all company team to communicate and share and connect people together. But the idea of personalization and having my files, my sites isn't really there at the time. But there might be some some engagement with thinking around diversity inclusion initiatives as well, just starting to kind of percolate through the business. Again, if we move to level 300, where this is where we think organizations should be at, where we're now got a way of sharing communications across everywhere in the organization, regardless of where people are working from, in the frontline, office, or home working. We start to we create that place for community. So we've got that area where people can meet and share and start creating communities around topics and those subject matter areas, both work, but also, hobbies, social, things like maybe like the football club or cooking or whatever it might be, that people are interested in organizations. So we get those interest groups. Now what we really need to start thinking about is when we got a good way of communicating, that communication needs to be two-way as well. So one of the nice things about using things like Viva Connections and having an intranet is that people can comment on those news stories. They can start to give feedback, and generally that doesn't happen with email and all company emails. How often have you seen people reply back to an all company email? How well did it go for that person? Generally they didn't get a lot of feedback, or people got annoyed at them for responding back to everybody. But with an intranet and having that that approach, is people feel more sort of have permission to give feedback. But now, as we've got this level 300, we think level 400 is always about measuring, putting measurements in place so that we can see how things are working, how our processes are working, so that we can make improvements and get things better. So, we might start now using things like Amplify to measure how effective communication is, and start getting feedback on how we can make that communication more effective. We might also then start allowing different communities within the organization, so maybe different departments, to be able to push out news stories, and there could be approvals in place where say HR can push out a news story and it goes onto their department site, but there's an approval step which allows it to go onto the main intranet homepage. We're starting to look at the analytics and using the intranet to find out how well those news stories and those communications are being engaged. We're starting to look at those diversity initiatives, trying to put more focus around those to increase innovation and ideas from a broader set of people in the organization. And then from there, moving from level 400 to level 500, we've got more strategic comms teams, helping individuals and teams, maybe the projects which are going on, those initiatives in the organization, they're now being communicated through things like Amplify. Communities are being built out and looking at how effective they are being, maybe weeding out the communities which aren't being used that much, and driving more focus on particular communities in Viva Engage, and then trying to foster further inclusion in those interest groups, making things more diverse. And we start to get maybe AI, which, to be fair, we are spoilt with M365 with some of the AI personalization which we get already, but using that to improve that people are getting the right information and knowledge at the right time. So let's move into level 500.
Right.
So how are we doing on time?
Right at the beginning about how important it is to be able to measure and gain feedback on what's going on in your organisation. So I'm going to skip through this fairly lightly in the interest of time, but at level 100, the organisation, the managers may not even have thought to check on the state of their staff and the culture overall. If they are doing it, they may be doing it in a really ad hoc way. Word of mouth is typically the way of doing it. If they do send a survey out, it isn't routine or regular, so it comes up whenever they think about it, not on a sort of systematized approach. When you move up the levels, level 200, they're doing regular surveys, maybe quarterly or annually. They do have some mechanism for doing up and down the chain comms, but they aren't necessarily thinking through exactly the right questions. And if they are asking good questions, they haven't necessarily got a good way of thinking about the responses they're getting or commitment to resolving the issues which are arising. By the time you get to level 300, this is pretty much evened out. Surveys are regular. There are other tools in place to do feedback from employees into the organization. There are employee-driven forums, which managers or others are allowed to sit in on an occasional basis to hear the pulse of the organization, but not necessarily drive that. And you're starting to see emergence of 360 feedback and the organization valuing and acting on the things it hears. And you go up from there, and I'm not going to talk about the next few levels in detail. You can just imagine how that thing becomes more and more robust, more precise, and importantly, how the insights of the organization and the people in that organization are getting are seen to be acted on. And at the very highest levels, the impact that those actions have are fed back into the process again, so they can work out what are effective things that they're doing and which things are less effective and they need to change tack. Which takes us to growth. So at the growth level, again, going through this fairly quickly, at growth level, at low levels, people aren't really thinking about formal training. Maybe stuff comes up ad hoc. They'll do the legal minimum training for things like health and safety and governance and compliance, but they're probably not doing any active staff improvement stuff. Then at level 200, there's some recognition that it'd be nice if staff actually got better, more capable as they went along, and there are some resources perhaps delivered through an intranet portal or something like that. People are sent probably on a as needed basis to external courses, or people are brought in to deliver courses and training to the staff. But it's not very well organized at this level. By the time you get to level 300, it is well organized. There's an understanding of the roles and the skills needed at various different parts of the organization. There's good, if not perfect, but good attempts to set up personalized learning and make sure that people get structured training and access to knowledge and mentoring perhaps across the entirety of their life cycle with the organization. With that changing for people who are in their probation or first year compared with people who've been there for many years and know the ropes and need a different kind of upskilling and growth. People are being actively pushed up a career ladder with training to anticipate their next step, rather than saying, oh, Bill's left, we need to suddenly get Mary into that role, but she hasn't got the skills, so we'll spend the first month of her time in that role getting the skills. We're already anticipating those kind of changes and building resilience in the organization for it. So there's a whole bunch of quite sophisticated growth tools emerging in the organization, and the organization starts to talk about itself as becoming a learning organization, not just at the staff level, but staff, teams, and the organization as a whole, taking on that, how do we make ourselves better, and everybody feeling responsibility for that growth. So that's all I'll leave it to say about that one. Takes us on to
yeah, I think we just should we go across to the questions? I think we've got about 2 minutes left.
Let's do
that. We talk about how we will look and about sharing these slides. We'll have a chat with Laura about that. So just coming back to just thinking about what's important to you. What makes you feel engaged, what keeps you engaged, having to think through that and ask those questions. There's a link here to resources, and thank you very much for listening to what we've got to say. We really appreciate it. We'd love to get feedback.
Thanks, guys, for a great presentation and a great demo. So we'll get into the questions and answers part now. So should you wish to ask a question, please feel free to type it into the questions window. So our first question today is, someone wants to know, how do you see the role of Viva evolving in shaping employee experience?
Yeah, so I mean, you can sort of see the direction with Viva Skills, that it's looking to broaden out to bringing in other services which aren't really necessarily part of M365, with that LinkedIn graph bringing in some of that information. I mean, of course, Copilot is going to have a big impact with Copilot in Viva coming into each of the tool sets, which I think will be really good to allow us to kind of understand what other organizations are doing, so we can kind of learn from other organizations. So I think that's really a really interesting area.
I mean, I love the fact that Viva gives us access to information which, as managers or organization leaders, we've never had before. So I think there's real potency in what Microsoft have done with Viva, and it's an interesting departure from Microsoft's normal culture. So I think it's really potent. However, like all technology, it's only part of the story. I think you still need to make sure that you've got supervisors, managers, and staff who are properly engaged and willing to go and do the walking around, finding out human touch stuff. I think that is especially important where you've got remote workers. It's really easy to just lean on the tech and assume that it will give you everything you need and not do the reaching out stuff. So some things that Viva can't do, but I think organizations should do, is have regular stand-up meetings, which are partially sociable, where they've got remote or geographically distributed teams, to make sure that people are talking together, not just talking with tech.
Brilliant, thanks guys. So just another question then, someone is wondering if you can go back to the QR code.
Oh yeah,
of course.
Brilliant, thanks a million. So there's just one or two questions left then, and another question is, which employee experience areas should you start off with first?
Yeah, so we did talk about that just briefly in the session, but from my perspective, it's the connection. I think that's probably also my personality traits as well. But making people feel comfortable in an organization, making them have that connection quickly with an organization, connecting them to the people that they're working with, being able to break down those barriers. I think that's where you should start, because you can then use that to allow people to find out how things work in the organization and get help when they need it. Simon, I think you've got a slightly different perspective as well, haven't you?
I mean, obviously you need to do it all. You'd have to do it all to the same level. You need to do it all, but equally you need to start somewhere. And one of the things that I've done with all of my companies is really start with our purpose. I've literally up here, I've got a set of business principles off my wall up here. And whenever we reach out to hire new staff, one of the things we share right up front are our business principles and what it is that we have as a vision for the company. Because I really don't want to employ anybody that isn't going to buy into both of those. So we start really early on with our purpose prior to bringing people into the organisation, and then I guess connection probably does come next for us. But we start with purpose, start with the why, as Simon Sinek would say, then we do the connection. We do insight in increasingly mature ways, but initially it's just kind of ad hoc personal stuff, because we'd rather have something than nothing. And then the growth kicks in a little bit later for us. So we start purpose, then connection.
Yeah,
brilliant. Thanks a million, guys. So just another question then. Someone is asking, companies like to focus on numbers. Do you have any numbers to connect to these benefits, or advice on how to approach the need for hard figures?
Oh yeah, if we jump back to slide 6, actually.
Yeah, let me, there's a quicker way. Let me do that one. There we go.
Great. So these numbers are hard numbers, in as much as they come from proper studies with decent p-values if you're into the statistical part of it. So we'll leave this up. Grab a screenshot of something of this. The links to at least 2 of those surveys are at the bottom. There's also, Microsoft are doing, to be honest, a really good job of trying to do some proper sort of scientific sort of organizational psychology and productivity analysis. So Microsoft issue, I think it's a quarterly workplace update now, and I guess we'll have to find the link for that, which has got some great insights in terms of the numbers and includes some benefits that have been driven out of that. I think some of this technology is so new that we haven't got a really rich set of data around those benefits yet. We were at a Microsoft presentation a couple of weeks ago, and to be honest, my view was that they were kind of cherry picking some of the data that they were presenting at that point. But I think that's mostly because there isn't as much data yet as we'd like. Viva and Copilot, they're both about a year old, so we haven't got all the studies, but it's coming. But definitely look at the Microsoft Workplace Index study. Oh, the Microsoft, there it is. Actually, right down there, number 5, Microsoft Work Trend Index 2023. Some terrific stuff in there that you can take back to your organization and say, this is why we should be doing some of this stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things I do searches for engaged employees, because there's a lot of interesting articles around there, and the Gallup one is really good, looking at figures for sort of benefits to return for shareholders as well. So there's a lot of good information and approaches which people are taking, which you can then use to kind of drive the reasons why you'd want to improve employee experience.
I'm going to find you a link for that Work Trend Index as well. I'll put that in our chat, and Laura, perhaps you can pass that on.
Yeah, no problem.
So you've got to take the
Brilliant.
Microsoft spin out of these things, but the underlying data is good.
Fantastic. So that seems to be all the questions that we have in here. So I might just wrap up the Q&A session there. But I just want to say a huge thanks to both of you, Simons, for taking the time today to carry out this webinar. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's been good.
It's been a pleasure as always. Hopefully we can do this in person sometime.
Great. So that is the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. That is it for today, folks. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today. Take care, and we hope that you'll join us again soon. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.